Are you ready to perform at your highest potential? Welcome to the Performance Matters podcast from GP Strategies, your talent transformation partner. In each episode, we'll interview industry experts and explore best practices and innovative insights to help your organization improve performance.
I'm your host, Michael Teal, and today we're talking about the collision of artificial intelligence and coaching. So if you're interested in hearing about some of the roles AI can play in supporting coaches, what AI is and isn't a substitute for in the world of coaching, as well as maybe picking up some fresh perspectives on the multi-layered relationship between AI and coaching, well, stick around. We've got a great show for you. I'm pleased to be joined by two luminaries in the practice of leadership and coaching, Kevin Wilde and Leah Clark. First about Kevin. So in 2015, Kevin Wilde concluded a 34-year corporate career in leadership and talent development at General Electric and General Mills. During his time at General Mills, the organization was consistently recognized for its innovative development work, highlighted by Fortune's #2 ranking as one of the best companies in the world at leadership development. And oh, by the way, Training Magazine's Hall of Fame designation as a top company for employee development. In 2007, Chief Learning Officer magazine selected Kevin as its Chief Learning Officer of the Year. He remains incredibly active, giving back as an executive leadership fellow at the University of Minnesota's Carlson School of Management. And in 2022, he authored the book, Coachability, the Leadership Superpower, which I have to say has been incredibly beneficial to me on a personal level. Kevin, welcome.
Thank you. A very kind introduction and looking forward to our conversation together.
Joining Kevin is longtime friend of the Performance Matters podcast, Leah Clark. Leah is the leadership practice lead at GP Strategies, as well as an author and founder of Leader Connect. With over 20 years of experience in her field, Leah brings a unique perspective on the mindsets and skill sets critical to leadership success to her coaching and consulting. Leah's clients benefit from her collaborative approach to crafting a well-connected and thoughtful leadership development strategy. And oh, by the way, Leah holds a Master of Arts in Organizational Psychology from Columbia University, a Bachelor of Arts, English and Sociology from Boston College. Leah, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. I won't hold that pronunciation against you. Thanks for having me, Michael.
And I'm honored for both of you making time here to talk about what we're talking about today. And that's really this collision of artificial intelligence and how it impacts coaching. And I know there's so much going on here. Set the table on kind of what you're seeing as the significance of AI as it pertains to modern coaching. Let's just talk about this.
I'd love to jump in, and I'll continue to sort of twist the metaphors here because you're setting the table. We're talking about the collision of AI and coaching. And, maybe collision isn't the right term. It sounds a little bit angrier than perhaps the truth or the reality is. And maybe it's a merging or a blending. Maybe we're blending things. I think really the significance is it's not an either or scenario. So I don't believe that the modern presence of AI and coaching is such that AI is going to make the case for why we don't need coaches anymore. I think instead, what we'll see is an and also proposition. You can use AI to support coaching in certain ways or support access to information, feedback, and also there is a real need and will continue to be a real need for the presence of a human being, a leader in the loop to coach effectively. So for me, it's an and also proposition. Yes, there is a place for AI in the world of coaching and also that human in the loop to provide what AI can't in that coaching relationship. So that's my perspective.
Let's explore the edges of this topic too, because I think, in our field of talent development, oftentimes we get enamored with the new thing and let's throw out the old thing. And that's old fashioned. And maybe it is, maybe it isn't this time around. There clearly is a big buzz around what is this, AI, Gen AI, learning platforms that are just being infused in this. And where's it going?
You're asking and posing some good thoughts of conversation, some things for us all to look at here. I want to kind of start us off at probably, one of the biggest positions or perspectives I've heard, and that's this idea that artificial intelligence, and I'm going to say specifically generative AI, the thing that's come to the lay people here over the past couple of years, there's a position or perspective that it makes a great coach. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
I think, yes, it is a coach. Is it a great coach? I think the context and the practice, and we'll see where it evolves. I've seen it in my leadership development work, and I've seen the vendors out there, and it's very intriguing. And there's certainly some applications in it. I think the most intriguing one right now is, the old model was coach was only a human being, and you could only afford a professional coach for special people. And I think while that may be true, I think the specialness of a well-trained AI coach, I think it could go to scale with some reservations. And people are doing it. I've seen platforms that have done it. It's like, wow, this is better than going it alone. So I would start there.
I would absolutely agree with that. Does it make a great coach? I hear what you're saying absolutely in terms of there are coach-like aspects of it, and what a great thing to bring the special aspect of coaching to those who maybe didn't always have access to it. So agree with you on that. From a purist standpoint, I would say it's technically, in my opinion, not really coaching, because for me, AI can provide feedback. It can provide access to information. But if I think about coaching as defined by that process of appreciative inquiry that happens between two individuals, where there is the nuance of communication, there is a shared history, there is the emotional intelligence that the coach expresses when they are coaching an individual, that the magic of that exchange and that inquiry and that connection between two human beings, that's just not there with AI coaches or AI coaching tools. So I think if I'm a purist, I would say use AI to get information, provide feedback, to give coach-like support. But from a purist standpoint, I think it will never certainly replace the magic and the nuance of that human-to-human interaction.
I think, Leo, at that point, the question is, okay, so how do I make the dance work between what AI could provide and where I need the human in there? And I think we're going to explore that. Two interesting things I've come across lately related to that. One, I was on a webinar the other week, and there was a company that had rolled out AI coaching to their workforce quite successfully. Very smart, small pilot, slow rollout. You're special if you get it. And they were really learning. And I was really amazed, like, man, this is great, and great uptake and engagement from the employees that have gone through it. The interesting thing, though, right at the end, the director of talent development said, I have to be honest with you, this is not really coaching. When we looked at the metrics of how they were using the AI coach, it was more information seeking. Maybe I'll call this 2D and 3D coaching, two-dimensional coaching. I'm looking for information. You give me the information. Obviously, a lot richer than a Google search. And again, there's some relational aspects of it, but it's two-dimensional. As Leah said, the third dimension is that humanness that adds something. And you don't need that all the time. I mean, I don't need a human being to, guide everything I'm doing in life. But man, there's a lot of things I'd like to get some quick information, which leads me to my little experiment. So a few weeks ago, I was a guest speaker in one of the university graduate leadership courses here. And I typically, in my gig is, okay, there's this thing called coachability, and let's talk about it in your leadership. And I always start with a feed forward exercise. And if you've seen this exercise, what you do is you find someone, and you say, hey, I'm trying to get better at X. Do you have any ideas for me? And you get some ideas, and then you turn it around and you help them out. And then you look for the next person, and you rapidly brainstorm ideas based on bumping into people. But the professor said, oh, Kevin, I want to use AI more in my course. Why don't we skip the human part of it and just have people go into ChatGPT? And I said, why don't we do an experiment? I'll take half the class out in the hallway, do it the old-fashioned human way, and then you do the computer thing. And at the end of it, let's compare notes and do some research on satisfaction. And we did it. And we asked 3 questions at the end of it to everyone. We had about 50 involved, 25 in the hall with Kevin and 25 in the room with the professor and ChatGPT. And we said, how satisfied are you with this exercise? Did you generate a lot of ideas that were useful? And are you going to use any of them? And on the first one, the humans won a little bit, but both were equally satisfied. Yeah, I got some ideas. The second one, did you generate a lot? The computer won. And as much as the humans say, I got good ideas, the scale and speed of getting ideas from ChatGPT, and they had done some prompt engineering training to start with, so they were pretty good using it. Wow, this happened fast. So back to what good coaching could be through AI, the two-dimensional coaching, is you can contact a lot of people. It's on demand 24 hours a day. And I was reading a blogger there that said that the thing about those AI systems is compared to human beings is they are infinitely patient.
Yes.
However, the third question was a deal breaker. And the question was, are you going to use any of these ideas?
Mm.
And I think, again, the two dimensionals, like I'm just getting information, might use it, might not. Thank you very much. A lot of advantages of that. But that third dimension about the emotional encounter with someone else that causes you to be more reflective on what is it I'm trying to learn and get better at, and more of that human commitment about, you know what, I have more confidence to use these ideas. And so, my study in the earlier one is that, number one, very useful tool. We really should dig into an experiment with it, but know there are some limitations.
So you two are bringing up something very interesting to me. I'm hearing there's a lot of power in the scale, in the flood of ideas. There's also power in the humanness, the context, maybe even that element that the information doesn't come as easy from a human, right? Thinking about this, I'm hearing this is where you're going back, Leah, that it's more of a blending that's going on here. So I'm hearing there's potential for different layers. How do we take the best of both of these as a coach to help us coach others?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of layers to even that question. So if we think about different AI tools, and I know we tend to talk a lot about ChatGPT and tools that are prompt oriented, but there are other AI tools that can help to monitor, for example, employee performance and give feedback, right? Maybe on a call center rep or on somebody performing some particular task on behalf of an organization. And that type of AI tool has incredible ability to give feedback with precision, right? To give somebody very specific, possibly unbiased information about how the person is performing, right? Because if it's created the right way, that tool maybe has less bias and less baggage than the human being brings to the interaction. So in that situation, that type of performance monitoring tool is great and can give some good specific information that a leader can't give because they're not there every single moment to watch or monitor that performance. However, I wouldn't leave it there. I would want the involvement of a human being, a human coach, to help make sense of the performance feedback that the tool provides, to talk about what was going on with you when your performance was high. What can we do to improve your performance? Where might the data be faulty, or where might it be illuminating something? So just to kind of put another layer into it, we like to talk about AI as all chat related tools, but there are some other interesting tools that can provide, again, performance feedback. And yet still, I would want the human coach to help make sense of that performance feedback and bring greater context to the situation. So that's one example. If we go the more traditional chat AI related tool, still there, you can ask Gen AI for, guidance on something or information on how to approach something, but it will give you a list, a process, some things you need to do. I'll say, where's the human in the loop to help you understand the nuance of what AI is suggesting? So yes, use AI. It can be really beneficial in some specific areas to give you feedback or information, but it's that leader that brings context and helps to make sense of the information that AI can provide.
And I think that Leah's right. That sort of blending about, how could it be used in the flow of work, which in learning development we've been after for many years. But now we probably have a more powerful way into nudges and supports. And I think that's one of the most creative ways we can get into it is, how do you both augment, nudge, and help employees out, help our performers out. I was thinking of, the other day, I had a good fortune many years ago to have a guy work for me that used to be a receiver in the NFL. And we're talking once about what's it like to be a pro. And he talked about, Monday mornings after the performance, you got in with your skills group and the coach would show the tape and then give everybody feedback. I'm thinking, in the NFL today, do they just not do that? Because you just dump all the video into a big system and have that coach all your performers? Probably not, but it sure might speed up things for those that want that. So I think there's also that degree of whether the human being is more accurate at diagnostics, more accurate at suggestions, performance feedback, but also where in the learner relationship do you want to just have information delivery at scale? You think about nowadays, you hear these reports about AI doing better than doctors at diagnosing certain things. Like, okay, that's pretty cool. I still want a doc to talk to me, by the way. In the sports world, like, I wonder if it's going to replace some of it, but not all of it.
I think that's it, some of it, but not all of it, and I was reflecting on another aspect of AI that reminds me of what you're sharing relative to the coaching and analyzing all of that information. When I coach, one of the things that I'm challenged by is sometimes just the ability, and I don't know, Kevin, if you've experienced this, to remember the details of what that individual has told me, despite the copious notes that I take, and to remember, we talked about this challenge the last time, or this person reports to you in this particular way. This part's interesting because AI has an enormous capacity to remember in ways that we probably never can, right? To remember incredible detail and massive amounts of information. So I think it's going to be interesting. But again, we need to bring the nuance to what happens in that relationship with that person. And there's the context again. There's incredible power in that. But there is a balance, right? AI can remember a lot and see patterns in data, can view the videotape, can keep the notes in ways that we can't, but we still come in as human beings to provide the insight and to encourage the self-reflection about what to do with that information. Where do you want to go next with your decision as a leader or an employee who's being coached?
One of the things I'm reminded as we're describing this is it's very rational. Memory, data, tactics, all of that. Let's talk emotions for a second. And one of the things that's raging in the whole AI field is, are AI systems, are they human or not? Right? What is human? What are emotions and all that? And we'll leave that to the experts moving forward. I know in my own coaching practice, when I ask someone, what feedback do you listen to or not? There seems to be, hey, if someone told me to improve, I'm filtering it with three things. Number one, do they have context? Do they understand my situation? Maybe AI can help there. Two, do they have competence? Do they know what they're talking about? And again, with the right system, you might be able to deliver a lot of that. But to me, the third C is caring. And I think there's that moment where, okay, do I take the information? Do I take the rational part? Do they care about me? I just can't see a system delivering that emotional, psychological safety or support that one needs to.
That's interesting.
But I think the caring one is where the humans need to come in. And as the leader and coach, I want to show that, I have the best interest of the performer or the employee in mind. I want to be supportive of that.
If I just really put a bow on what you two have been talking about in terms of how AI might help you as a coach, as a human coach, it's doing a lot of the prep work so you have things to talk about with the individuals that you're coaching. Whether it's, Leah, you mentioned where you've plugged in data systems that are bringing in information and insight for you two to talk about, whether it's just helping you, as you mentioned, Kevin, nudge others and keep people on track and maybe systematize some of the follow-up elements, or even just as Leah, you mentioned, remember things. You can step in and it's maybe relieving some of that administrative burden so you can really give the best of you to shine on that end. So I think there's a lot of value on that. If I pivot us, and let's think about personal development as Leah and Kevin, as you two as professional coaches. So I'd love your take on how AI could potentially help you develop yourself as someone who is the provider of coaching.
Where I'd start with them as clearly as with we're talking about others is, that can help me with brainstorming and help me with diagnostics and remember things and go find things. So I think in terms of, information support, that can clearly help the coach over time. I'd start there, particularly the diagnostic and then what are the solution generators. One of the books I just finished reading on AI was Leah's recommendation on engines of engagement, as they talked about, look, if you think about great technology changes in humankind and how it's changed things, I think they talked about three different kinds of change. I think it applies to coaching. One is type 1 change, which is it makes it more efficient. So, I've got behind me, I've got oodles of books on leadership development. And if someone I'm coaching needs to improve on being more strategic, I would go to my files, I'd look at hours of things, I'd come up with a plan. Now I can go to AI. That makes me more efficient at, resource sharing and putting development plans together. The second type of change is that changes the whole system. And we're starting to see that. So back to the, how do I become a better coach as well? When do I provide a personal touch? Or where do I send the client, the coachee, the employee to the system. That's going to evolve over time, but shortly, that Leah blend that she was talking about. But then there's that third order of change, which is we can't even imagine. We can't even imagine the ripple effects of some of this is going to be. So I leave room a little bit to not only AI helping me be a better coach to be more efficient, to maybe re-engineer my whole system of helping people develop, but also have an eye out for what are some of the consequences of this that I could leverage.
Interesting. So it's almost, you're saying keeping your eyes open, right? Just saying you might not have the answer, but almost seeing how the ecosystem evolves is.
Some things you can imagine nowadays with AI and coaching, some things you just can't. The spirit of curiosity, optimism with caution, but also that notion, but there might be something out there that I haven't thought about because my assumptions are blinding me to a better way of doing something.
And I love what Kevin shared, big picture and strategically. And I'll offer another way of looking at it in a really practical way. So say a coach is going to be having a difficult conversation. They know one of those, a leader is coach in this example. It's a tale as old as time, right? I'm going into this difficult conversation with an employee and how should I handle it? Great. Use ChatGPT to ask you, what are some things that I should do when handling a difficult conversation with an employee? And you will get a very long, probably pretty good outline of things that you should do and remember when you are in that difficult conversation. But again, that's process and it's reminders and it's tips that you should consider when you're in the conversation, but it's how you handle the nuance of that interaction that really depends on you up as a human being, right? What is your tone? What is your body language? How do you read what's happening with the other person? How do you bring in what you know of that person, the challenges they've had in the past, your shared history, the level of trust that you have? So use AI to help you be a better coach, to remind you of the things that you want to do when handling a difficult conversation, and an incredible amount of nuance and context and personal relationship and emotional intelligence that really is the firepower behind a thoughtful and a strong coaching moment, let's say.
I think rather than on and off, I think this notion about does it generate information that you can consume? Yes, I've seen some simulators that not only am I preparing to have a difficult conversation, but let's have it. And it's you and AI having the conversation. At the end of it, it's like, well, how did I do? And they say, well, you've done these things well. And Kevin, next time around, do this. Like, great, let's try it again. So I think there's this halfway point that I think as AI continues to evolve, that role-playing role will be powerful. But that's not another human being across the table from you. You still have to have those moments. A related point I'll make, as much as we're talking about, boy, we could use these systems more to deploy with our workforce, to help our leaders get better, to help us get better. I mean, let's face it, we are all in sort of a loneliness crisis. And loneliness is not going to be solved by AI. It's going to be connecting with people. So I think as we're evolving these tools, that we still have to, or should primarily, have key relationships and keep working to enrich and to connect.
Yeah. And you're brushing up another area that has ethical implications that I know we're not going to go into, but that question of loneliness and can AI be a friend or a support? That is a really interesting and complicated, I think, question. Probably, Michael, for another podcast would be my guess.
Yeah, let's make a note there. We'll get that on the docket here. So, I've got so many layers of this onion to peel back, though, in terms of the different layers and use cases of coaching. I'm going to pose another question to you too. Here's the shift in perspective: is how do you coach someone when you know someone else is using AI, and obviously you're embracing it or endorsing it, but what's the levers you can pull as the coach in that case?
Yeah, this is a really great question. And you're right, there are many, many layers to this. And I love what you said at the end, which is when you want them to continue to use it or you want to encourage the use. So if we are assuming in this scenario, the organization and you as a leader want to encourage the embrace of AI, which I think is a positive thing, and AI is permissible for use in the organization. That's a starting point, right? Because every organization has its policies and its guidelines for AI use. Assuming we've cleared that hurdle, you want to, first of all, acknowledge, recognize the positive aspect of that individual using AI. That's great. Glad you're innovating, happy that you're finding other ways to solve this. And then, I think the coaching needs to revolve around what leaders themselves need to do with AI information, which is look at it with a critical eye. Make sure that you are bringing your own cognitive process, your own creative thinking and strategic thinking to that relationship, to that coaching moment. What I mean by that is, how can you step back and coach the person with you to step back and say, what am I seeing in the data? Where does it feel consistent with what I would have expected to see? Where does it seem questionable? What is the source? What gives me confidence? What makes me, a little bit shaky about what's been provided to me? So I think it's about encouraging the use and also making sure that your people are using their own cognitive thinking, their own critical thinking to make sense of the information from AI and determine the best path forward.
I think, Leah, what you're describing there, I'd say there's a couple different hats you can wear with that question about, okay, someone I know that I'm supporting or I'm working with is using it. How do I make sure it's working well for them as well as the organization and our team? And I think one of the hats I would say is the peer learning hat. Oh, you're using it? I'm using it too. What are you learning? So that mutual, we're on the journey together. I think humbly, let's start there. But then say, well, here's what I'm seeing. There's some cautions, or what do you think of this? But, having that curious peer learning hat is one position you can take with someone who's using AI and you're trying to guide them well. I think the other one is I'll call the general manager hat. And, in a career, you start as a technical expert. And then at some point, if you do want to get involved with higher levels of management, you become the general manager. So while you may have that one specialty you know a lot about, you have people reporting to you that know more about different topics than you're going to learn. And while there should be a certain level of, I need to know a little bit about sales and a little bit about manufacturing, et cetera, I'm the general manager. And I think the general manager headset is all about great questions. Times that I've worked for bosses and I've worked with leadership teams and I've seen CEOs and others, they have their specialty area where they've got deep knowledge in a field, but they were always really good at understanding the landscape, giving you the questions which really got you thinking, in some cases to give them confidence, you know what you're doing. And that applies to AI use. And I think in other cases, it's like, okay, so am I going to decide for this or against this? I think the general manager hat is one of staying on top of things to the point that you can give questions to fill out the perspective, to add credibility with where they're going with this. And whether you want to call it the guru mindset or not, again, the peer hat, hey, you're learning, I'm learning too. What are you learning? Let's compare notes. Let's keep it going. And then the other hat is the general manager hat. Let me ask some questions about this.
Interesting. And that your book, Coachability, the Leadership Superpower, tying back, I keep thinking of the opportunities of AI in this, and I'm sure you've already built out, some sort of NVIDIA super chip on your book. But, the thing that really hit me in that was this idea of coming to terms with recognizing that everyone, no matter your station in an organization, you have blind spots. And when you're embracing coachability and a coachability mindset, you are opening yourself up to others and saying, thanks for the note, give me some feedback. And I could see if you've got something that is set up where others are maybe feeding in or receiving information about their potential blind spots, I could see that being a really powerful and really a safe conversation tool, because perhaps receiving feedback from a system that it's maybe points of consideration, and then you as a coach could come in and say, hey, what did the AI say about some potential opportunities for exploration, instead of you coming in as a human? So I even think for maybe defensive people that have a bit of more of that posture, this could be an entry point to opening them up to possibilities for coaching. What do you think about that?
Back to the spirit of coachability, I think anything that gets someone in what I call the learning zone, which I found the highly coachable leaders are people that, one, have a confidence enough to ask for feedback or think about improvement, and then the humility or the curiosity to improve. And I think if nudges and coaches and AI system can help you get in that learning zone more, I'm all for it.
I think there's something too, you use the term blind spot. I know this is not where you were going initially, but I have to kind of pull on this thread, because one of the places where I can see AI having limitations as a coach is that AI can only give you information based on what it knows, based on patterns and history, and it can only give you information based on what you ask. One of the most powerful aspects of a human coach is the ability to ask a question that feels either intuitively right or that they want to ask based on patterns that they're noticing or seeing. Again, whether it's reading the context, reading the body language, and AI can't do that. It can only give you what you ask it, whereas a human coach can give you a question that you didn't ask for, right? But they just know intuitively they're picking up on. And I know for a lot of folks who appreciate a coaching process, it may be painful when I say this, but some of the most powerful moments I've had as a coach, when my intuition tells me to ask what seems like a slightly odd question, and it lands in an extraordinarily powerful way. And I'd like to think some of that is because I'm a good coach, but I also think that some of it is, again, what I'll just call the power of the intuition associated with coaching and the ability of the coach to know to ask a question that the person themselves wouldn't have asked, but is necessary to help get to some greater level of awareness. I know I sound a little out there with what I'm describing, but there is the power of asking the unknown question that the person didn't know needed to be of them in order to make that breakthrough.
Yeah, I've got another little nuanced layer of coaching and AI that I want you to react to here. And that is something that I think, Kevin, you alluded to a bit earlier, and that's the idea of how AI could potentially provide exposure to coaching to a broader level of the workforce that historically hasn't had access. So I'd love your perspectives and where you think that is right now and where it might go.
I'll give you one. We're always talking about how do we upskill and how do we reskill our workforce. And while there's a corporate perspective, I think an individual perspective, yeah, I get that, but I want thinking on my career. Where can I go? What are the jobs I really want? How do I get them ready for it? There are career coaches that do that. AI systems can get that deeper into the workforce than HR career coaches could. And so one of the areas that I think we're starting to see in that the modern career planning is AI systems helping employees understand more about their motivations through assessments and company data, et cetera. Here's the couple career paths you might want to think about. Then you talk to a human being, or you start with a human being and then you go to the system. I think we could do a much better job helping people think through their next career move or their aspirations down the road or what's possible in any one organization based on these kind of tools.
Yeah. And it gives folks the opportunity to explore what that next career move might look like or what those roles might be that they're interested in relatively easily, right? Without having to do a lot of interviews or internet searching. You could, use generative AI to tell you, hey, I'm interested in this role. Tell me what the day-to-day looks like, or tell me what this role would look like if I decided to pursue it. The other place where I thought you were going is AI's ability to provide customized or tailored learning and development plans. So we're in the process of reviewing some of the research that we've done with individual contributors and leaders. And among the many questions we've asked is, how are you using AI right now? And one of the primary ways folks are using AI is to create tailored learning development plans for them, to give them suggestions for where, what specifically can they do to learn and grow and develop in the areas that interest them. So I think that's a continuation, Kevin, of what you were sharing in an important way for people to leverage the tools.
I think the other area that I'm curious about, again, getting information to the people that, in a much more efficient, broad way than we've done before. I'm also curious about how that changes the relationship with the manager, because to some degree, many transactions is the manager passing knowledge. How do you do this? And that then cements relationship that then, goes to, I think, better places. But that, okay, let me teach you how to do this. If systems start doing that much more efficiently, I think managers have to rethink what's my identity as the leader or the coach. And I know, Leah, you're very involved in this AI leadership thing that you might want to take a second and talk about. But that notion, okay, I'm both trying to achieve the goals of my team and my organization. I've got talent I'm working with. I also have systems I'm working with. How do I navigate all of that as I redefine what is my value-added role? And again, the point is, at some point, you might be spending a lot of time doing things that, no, Let the system do that. You have other
Yeah.
places you can do to show caring, to connect with people. I'm not seeing relations yet that people walk away saying, wow, I'm really motivated now to achieve that team goal. No, that's your tribe. That's the leader role. Maybe inspiring is the brave new future of AI, but for now, I think that's the leader's role, to inspire.
Yeah, you're spot on. And that is what, you gave a nod to the Leadership AI program that we've rolled out. That really is the focus of that larger experience, to say, yes, leader, embrace AI. AI can be a data historian. It can analyze a lot of information. It can provide answers that maybe you provided in the past. That doesn't mean that you're no longer needed. It means that you're needed, leader, in different ways. And it means that you can focus on higher order skills like critical thinking, skills like coaching, leading people through change. So use AI to give you that head start, but know that you as the leader in the loop plays a critical role, as you said, to inspire, to motivate, to coach, to do all of the wonderful things that you can do that require thinking in a different way, connecting with the human beings on your team. So, we sort of come full circle here, and it is AI and also the power of the leader in the loop.
Yeah, I'm hearing from both of you this idea of embracing the opportunity that, as a manager, your role is going to be different, but it could be better because you're perhaps being unshackled from a lot of those administrative burdens, and you can bring what really only you as a human can bring to the table. Could be a much, much brighter future in terms of the impact you can bring. And speaking of impact, you two have been very generous with your time. I know there's so many more conversations we're going to have about the role of AI and coaching and leadership. I mean, this is fertile ground here. As we're wrapping up, though, I'm going to give you both kind of a chance for a little final parting take here. Kevin?
The spirit of what we're doing here is the right one moving forward for all of us, which is, let's have the conversation. Let's kick it around. Let's see where it goes. I mean, I've been around long enough. I've seen technology come to bear, and to some degree, we always think, gee, that's a shiny object. We got to go there. This one seems to be very comprehensive, but I've lived through the avatar era. I've lived through the blockchain era. Like, no, I don't see flying cars out my window yet. I would say that cautiously, there's something great here. I think it can really add a lot to coaching and leadership and organizations. Some of it we're starting to see bear fruit. Other things are brave experiments, and there's clearly things we don't even know is going to happen. So I'd say, yeah, let's all stay in the game and be peer leaders to each other, peer learners. But I think the fundamentals still apply too, on how we lead and how we coach. These are going to be ways you're going to augment it and maybe replace certain things. But I think don't lose sight of the critical fundamentals about connecting with people, inspiring people, making that human caring connection, and then really diving into systems that can help with so many other things.
Just underscoring what Kevin said, I think we've both been pretty consistent in our message, right? It is not AI or a human being as a coach. It's that and also proposition. How can we stay open-minded and curious about what the AI tools can bring to the table to give you a head start, to augment information that you might need about performance, or to provide some feedback or information, and then use that information and what you get from AI in those moments of human connection to the extent they can support those moments and give you insight that maybe you didn't have before. But it's not one or the other. It's the and also proposition, because the role of the coach, the role of the leader as coach, is incredibly valuable. That human connection, the ability to express empathy, to be emotionally intelligent, to read body language, that's just something that AI can't do yet. And I like to think it will never be able to do with as much precision as a human being. So keep that human connection alive, keep the role of the leader as coach alive, while simultaneously embracing that head start or augmentation that the tools can bring.
Well said. Kevin and Leah, you've been very gracious with your time. On behalf of our global listening audience, I want to give thanks for you for joining us today.
The Performance Matters podcast is brought to you by GP Strategies. Together, we can create a world where business excellence makes possibilities achievable. You can subscribe to the show anywhere you get podcasts, or listen on our website at gpstrategies.com.